Hello and welcome to another episode of Career Magic with Nitin Kulkarni. This is the third part of the Career Magic series on stress and resilience. In part one of this series, we talked about the human body's stress response system, how it works. So we learned that the human body's stress response system is designed for short duration physical distress, and it has evolved to help us survive these situations by enabling us to do our best at a fight or flight response. We also learned that this same stress response system, which is designed for acute physical stress, also gets triggered when we experience psychological stressors, and they go on for longer durations, whereas this stress response system is designed to operate for short bursts of time and not for long durations. And therefore, our body does not do very well when these stressors are turned on for long durations of time. In part two, I spoke about how the chronic switching on of this stress response system affects major organ systems in the body. I only talked about four things, but it actually affects many other things as well. I talked about four major things. The cardiovascular system, how it leads to hypertension and heart disease. It impacts the digestive system, leading to chronic digestive problems. It affects the reproductive system, leading to fertility problems in young adults. And then it also affects the immune system, which in turn causes us to fall sick more often. So we become much more susceptible to disease. All of these are bad effects, and they affect us because we do not understand that this system has been switched on for long periods of time, and inside it's almost like a termite, damaging our bodies. And today what I want to talk about is, now what do we do to cope with this problem? And to begin with, it's important to understand that the triggering of our stress response system happens when an event that we see or we anticipate is perceived as a threat. So a threat equates danger, and it turns on this system. So an event, actual or perceived, how we perceive it. If we perceive it as a threat, we switch on the system. If we do not perceive it as a threat, we do not switch on the system. So that gives us a clue on how we might be able to tackle this problem by either changing the perception, changing how we perceive this event, or by altering the dynamics of this event so that the threat perception gets changed, and therefore the stress response system is not switched on any longer. Now, in this context, there is a prayer known as the Serenity Prayer. I don't know who wrote it, but it's a very, very powerful prayer. And let me actually state that prayer, and then I'm going to talk about it and talk about how it relates to this topic of coping with chronic stress. So the prayer goes like this: God, give me the courage to change things that need changing, the serenity to accept things that cannot be changed, and the wisdom to know the difference. Now, we don't have to look at necessarily this prayer in religious terms, but think about it as a request that you are making to yourself in terms of how you should look at things or events that occur that impact you and how you should cope or deal with them. So the first part, give me the courage to change things that need changing, requires us to take some actions to alter or change the stressor in some way so that it no longer is a stressor. The second part of it, give me the serenity to accept things that cannot be changed, is it talks really about adapting to or accepting the stressor and then taking measures to come to terms with it. So that from that we get these 4 ways to deal with our response to an event that could potentially be stressful. Well, the 4 methods are the 4 A's: avoid, alter, accept, and adapt. So let me go through these one at a time and give you some illustrations and examples. The first one is avoid, which is a response to an event that could be potentially stressful. Let's say I'm an introvert. I like to hang out with people one-on-one or in small groups, but it really stresses me out if I have to go to a large gathering and interact with a large number of people for a duration of time. If that event stresses me out and it is not really that important, I can say no to it. By saying no to it, I completely avoid that stressor. And then there are other situations like these where I can just get out of situations, refuse to deal with an event or interact with an event that causes me stress. The second one is alter. Now, alter is a situation where you take action. Again, with avoid also you have to take action. You potentially have to say no, which can sometimes be uncomfortable. With alter, again, you need to take action. So this fall in the realm of taking action. Give me the courage to take action where, to change the things that need changing. So let me give you an example of the alter strategy. Let's say that you have a boss, a manager who micromanages you, is always standing behind you when you are doing stuff, chasing you around, following up, really micromanaging you. And this is completely stressing you out because you have no autonomy in what you are doing. Well, you don't want to accept this because this is not going away and you can do something about it. So what you could do is decide to have a chat with your boss, give them feedback and see if they can change their behavior. And this requires the skill of having difficult conversations. But it is a stressor where your response can potentially diffuse the situation and make the stressor go away. So that's an example of alter. Both of these are give me the courage to change things that need changing kind of things. Well, the next 2 strategies are slightly different. The next strategy is called adapt. And adapting requires us to change our behavior and mindset somewhat in order to deal with the stressor. The effect of the stressor actually diminishes. And let me give you an example of something like this. So in where I live, in the community I live in, there is a neighbor I've got who has some pet cats. And these cats can sometimes be a nuisance. And what we found was that these cats were, sitting on the seats of 2-wheelers that are there in the parking. So I have a scooter and these cats would get up and sit on the seat of the scooter and damage the seat with their sharp claws. And so I decided to do something about it and had a chat with my neighbor. So I tried to alter the event, alter the stressor, but there was nothing that we could do about it because he said, well, there's nothing I can do about it. They have to be out sometimes and that's the nature of cats. They will do this. So do what I do, which is cover your scooter with a thick piece of cloth. And so even though I wasn't totally happy with the situation, I said, okay, I'll go ahead and do that. And since the time I have started covering my scooter with that, the problem actually has gone away. So I adapted to the stressor in this case, and it is no longer a stressor for me. The last category is accept, and I think that is the hardest one of all. That's a situation where you can do nothing about the stressor. You can't change your behavior to adapt, and you cannot do something to change the event or avoid the event either. And sometimes, when we suffer from chronic diseases, that could be a situation that falls in this category. There is nothing I can do about it, so I have to accept it and deal with it. And then in that situation, then I have to fall back on what is known as resilience, which is a muscle that I need to build over a period of time, which is something that I need to build that comes in handy when I have to deal with a stressor that I have to accept. Now, what are some things that fall in this category that can help me deal with the accept situation? How do I build resilience to cope with these kinds of situations? Again, I'm going to talk about, I just spoke about the 4 A's. Now I'm going to talk about 4 strategies to build resilience so that they can help us in this scenario. The first one is reaching out and talking to people. But this can only happen if, over a period of time, you build a network, you build relationships, and you have a support system of people that you can reach out to and talk to when you feel that you are getting stressed out. Because it really helps to talk to people. They'll reassure you, they will talk about their own scenarios, they'll talk about other people who have sort of suffered with from that kind of a stressor and what they have done about it. Reaching out and finding a support system is a brilliant way to actually cope with the stress, to have the resilience to deal with that stress. The second thing that helps is having realistic optimism. And when I think about realistic optimism, I think about Nelson Mandela, who was in prison for 27 years, spent the prime of his life in prison, and yet he never lost hope. When he got out of, imagine the stress he had spending that time in prison. When he got out of prison, but he was released when the regime was about to change. He won the election in South Africa, became the president, and became a wonderful president who united the country and put it on the path to a good place. So, realistic optimism, thinking that things are going to get better, is a wonderful trait to have resilience. The third thing is what I call self-efficacy, which is to believe in yourself that you can get through it. There are some situations, some stressors that you just have to ride out, that you have to push through, grind through, and things will get better. And that believe in yourself that you can cope, that you can do the things that need to be done to get through it. So that is the third thing, and it takes time. It takes situations where you get through these kinds of stressors for you to build that confidence. And finally, something that we all have heard about is a really useful technique. It's meditation. And what is meditation? Again, for a long time I was under the wrong impression that meditation is something religious or spiritual. It is nothing of the kind. It's a method to train your mind and to train your attention. Sometimes when you have to accept a stressor, the problem is not the stressor itself, but the how our mind keeps wandering towards negative thoughts, and it's those negative thoughts that actually cause the triggering of the stress response system. So the way to deal with that is to meditate and pay attention, to live in the moment and to pay attention to our attention and to gently bring it back to more positive things in the here and now in order to deal with it. There are many meditation techniques. I'm not here going to talk about meditation techniques, but you can find meditation techniques, learn some of those simple meditation techniques. For example, a simple breathing practice where you breathe slowly in and out, focus on the breath, and just the act of slow breathing actually tends to trigger the opposite side of our stress response system and negates the effect of the stress response system. So try these things, try the 4A strategy and then the 4-part resilience strategies to deal with stress, and see how it works out for you. If you try some of the, if you like what you heard today, do subscribe to my channel and do leave me comments on how you find these strategies and if in your experience they have worked for you. So that's all for today from Career Magic. See you again with another insight next time.